With today's lesson, we're going to be talking about graphing quadratics with a calculator. In the past, before we're using the calculator, we would have to identify our A, B, and C. Our A would have been -1, our B would have been -12, and our C would have been -34. To find the vertex, we had to use the opposite B over 2 times A, giving us -6 for x. We would have plugged that back in right into our calculator. As you can see, we'd plug in that -6 for our x value everywhere you saw x. So here, everywhere I saw x, I replaced it with a parentheses -6 right into that equation, and I get that my y equals 2. Remember, especially with negative numbers for your x value, you're going to want to use the parentheses as you see here, all right, to get the right answer. And also with the minus, you want to make sure you're hitting the minus button and not the negative button to get the proper value. So my calculator gave me the value y equals 2. So my vertex is an xy value. My x, we found using the axis of symmetry, was -6, and my y was 2. Now, as you recall, if we look at the a value, it's a -1. So that means my graph is going to be going down because it's negative for a. So at -6, 2, I plot my vertex, and I know that my graph is going to be going down. Now, to make my graph a little bit more accurate, what I can do is I can make an x, y table. And I can go ahead and start off with my vertex right in the middle. And I can go to -5, -4, and I can go to -7, -8. And I can find my y values the same way by plugging in a -5 everywhere for x, find my y value, put a -4 in, find my y value, and I can graph it. But for the sake of time, and for this example, we'll just sketch. And then the directions say find the min. So we know that when my parabola faces down, I have a max. And your max is always your y value. So my max will be at 2, a value of 2. My axis of symmetry, -6. My parabola is going down. My vertex is -6, 2, x, y. Got a max again at 2. So for the first example, we did the old way, writing everything out, and it takes some time. Using the calculator, we can cut down on our work and still be able to identify the vertex, axis of symmetry, what direction it's opening in, and the min and max value very quickly and easily. Alright, so looking here at number 2, we know that our value's positive for A, so we know that we're going to be opening up. So that's something we can just answer right away. Now to find my vertex using the calculator, the first thing I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to go ahead and put in my y equals, I'm going to go ahead and put the equation in. So you first want to hit y equals, and then we're going to put in number 2. So we got 2x to the second minus 20x plus 47. All right. So that was the y equals button right there. There's number 2. And then what I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to see what this looks like. So I'm going to graph it. So after hitting the graph button, your graph should appear something like this. And as we thought and predicted, since the a value is positive, it's going up. All right? And since it's going up, I'll have what's known as a minimum. All right? So we know we're going to have a minimum value. Now on the calculator, if I go ahead and hit second trace, I'm going to be able to calculate that minimum right here. So I'm going to go down to 3, and it's going to ask me for my left bound. Now if you look right now, my X is at 0. So the little blinky flashing button is at 0. So I'm going to go ahead and move over until I can see the flasher in the screen. Now, since the flasher is on my left side, I'm good to go. I'm going to hit enter. That's the left bound, the left side of my graph, my parabola. Now it's asking for the right bound. So I want to make sure that I'm on the right side of my vertex. So I need to move the flasher to the other side of the vertex. Alright, and hit enter. Now it's asking to go ahead and place the cursor where you think the vertex or the minimum would be. I'm going to go ahead and hit enter. So it gave us the value of x being 5 and y being -3. So my x is my axis of symmetry of 5 and my y is -3. So just by using that in the calculator, I no longer have to do the opposite of b over 2a because they give you the x right here. And I no longer have to plug x back in to know what my y is. They tell you right away. It's -3. So to find my vertex, all I have to do is realize that my vertex is an xy value. So my vertex will be at 5, -3. And I can place that on the graph. 5, down, 3. There's my vertex. And I know I'm going to be going up. So now what I could do is I could just quickly make a table. 5, -3. And I can find some other values using my calculator. And I can do that by hitting second, graph, and then it'll pop up a table. So we knew the vertex was 5, -3, so I'm going to want to go down to the 5. And I have some other values. Now I can plot my point. 6, -1. I have 6, -1, and above that I got 4, -1. And then I also have 7, 5. And above that, I got 3, 5. So if we look back on our graph, I can quickly plot those. So right here, I got 6, -1, 6, -1. And then above that, we had 4, -1. And then we had 3, 5, 3, up 5. And then we had 7, up 5. And that makes sense because our parabola, our graph for all quadratics, has an axis of symmetry, so it should be the same image on both sides of our axis of symmetry. And then I can connect our points, creating our parabola. Before we move on to the notes for you, let's just make sure we answered all the questions. So now we identified the vertex, our xy value, right here, to be 5, -3. And that was our minimum, right there. It opens up, all right? And we want to make sure we have that min value. Just as a refresher, the min and max value will always be your y value. So in this case, we have a minimum, and my y value was -3. So right after the min, I want to make sure I write -3. So it's opening up. My min is -3. My axis of symmetry is x equals 5. And my vertex is 5, -3. So here are some notes that we took in class just to help you remember how to graph a quadratics and to help you find that vertex. The first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to plug that function, the question, into your y equals. Second, you're going to hit the graph button. And you want to make sure that the graph looks right. If your a value is negative, but your graph is going up, you know there's something wrong. So make sure you typed it in correctly. The third thing we did is we hit second trace. That allowed us to calculate either the minimum or maximum depending if our a was positive or A was negative. The fourth step is we were asked, what is the left bound? We want to make sure that flasher is on the left side of our vertex, and then we'll hit enter. Then it will ask for the right bound. We need to move that flasher on the right side of the vertex, and then hit enter. And then the guess is going to say, guess. You want to get it as close to the vertex as possible, and then hit enter. And then your x equals and your y equals is going to be your vertex.